Hello and welcome to the Practical Leadership Podcast, or like we like to call it, Practica Leadership, specifically here in honor of our guest today, where leaders share their tools and practical advice to make you a better leader today. I'm your host, Max Kozlowski, and today I have a very special guest. Our guest has been the voice, the advocate, a leader, and an example to the small business and Hispanic business community in Texas for many, many years. He has led both the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Austin Chamber of Commerce, to new heights, new success, has had to rebuild bridges, establish new connections, new relationships, and has set a new trajectory for their growth, for their success. There is no doubt that with his charisma, compassion, energy, and ultimate desire to really help contribute and make a difference in the small business, he has achieved those goals and now finds himself as the CEO of a very special company called Modern Managed IT, where they're providing IT solutions for small businesses. They're providing world-class solutions that did not exist before and at the price that is right for the small business. So it's very exciting to have Luis Rodrigues here today with us. Thank you so much for joining us in the podcast today.
Thank you, Max. And wow, I need to bring you everywhere with me if you don't mind, especially when I'm having team meetings here at the office. Thank you for those kind words and for having me on part of this podcast. I'm a big fan of Max. You know, you've known that for many years, and so I appreciate you having me on. So thanks a million again, Max.
Well, thank you. I remember first meeting you when you were in the Hispanic Chamber in San Antonio, and there was always something that people could just tell was special about you. Your ability to connect with, engage with, activate people was better than normal, right? It was like extraordinary. Your ability to figure out what people needed, what they wanted, and figure out a way that you could help them. And how hard you always were paying attention to those needs and trying to bring solutions really caught my attention. And ever since, I've been a big fan of yours as well.
Thank you, Max. Thank you so much.
So, Luis, let's talk a little bit about something really good, something positive that has happened in your world in the last few months. I know that there's a lot going on in your world, but is there something that kind of stands out?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, recently, I guess when we think about maybe something that happened these last 6 months, the latter part of 2021, and maybe the first, can you believe it, the first 3 months of 2022, we're already in March. So we've already gone through Q1, almost a Q1 of the new year. Well, a big highlight that I like to share is, you know, we launched Modern Managed IT in the latter part of 2020, November. We were still ironing out a lot of things that needed to be ironed out accordingly to ensure we were up to scale and ready to go. We received our funding of $1 million late November. And so really 2021 allowed us to have our first full year as a tech startup here in San Antonio, Texas. And the last 6 months were scary for me, Max, because it was working. What we set out to do was actually working. We are getting new customers. They were staying with us. We were servicing them. We're taking care. We're resolving issues. You mentioned it earlier. When we launched Modern Managed IT, we launched it with the vision and mission to really focus on the small business owners. You're 20 or below. From a managed service provider, they really look for, you know, more butts in seats, like 50 plus enterprise, more people, more users, more money. We really focused on a business plan that allowed us to focus on the smaller companies, but provide them with qualitative services, something that the bigger companies were used to getting. But the smaller companies, although they maybe wanted to have an outsourced managed IT partner, what was out there at the cost that they can afford from a small business perspective wasn't necessarily a solution, sometimes more of a headache. It was outsourcing. It was doing things the wrong way. And so Brett Pyatt, myself, we put together a good plan. We raised some money. We launched Modern Managed IT, And at the end of the year, it was working, right? So we're good. We've grown. And so just to, long answer short, the last 6 months has really been exciting things happening at Modern Managed IT as our customers are engaged. We're really helping them tremendously. What success looks like for us at Modern Managed IT is when we get a customer and they've been with us for a year. During that year, at the end of their first year with us, what did we do to elevate technology in their business? How did we help them become better, utilize technology better in their place of business? They better not be stagnant and be the same. We better not find them the same way we found them at the end of year one, right? They need to have enhanced technology, and Modern Managed IT have better been a big part of it. So that's really exciting. Obviously, I'm very excited with my wife and 2 daughters. They excite me every day because they do great and interesting things, but I could spend all week telling you about the exciting things happening at Casa Rodrigues with my wife and 2 daughters. But realistically, it's just what an exciting time to be a tech CEO here in San Antonio, working with a great team and just having a vision on helping small businesses.
Thank you for sharing that. So it's kind of interesting. Who would have known, right? You put a bunch of great people in charge of tackling a problem that exists in the industry that no one else is solving. And you have the right mindset, the right approach, the right philosophy to tackle that. And next thing you know, it's successful, right? So from the day that I knew you were going to be heading out on this venture, I knew that there was going to be some value added, and it was going to be a success, and it was going to be special. Let me talk a little bit about that mindset and that philosophy. So where did you first learn about leadership? When did you first develop or recognize that there was a formula for leading successfully, which is a little bit of what you said, and I'd love for you to elaborate on.
Yeah, no, the leadership. I think the moment we kind of are around adults, we're around leadership. It doesn't necessarily have to be at work. It could be our parents. It could be an aunt and uncle. It could be a teacher, a professor. There's so many. To me, the first time I think I ever really experienced leadership, one was at home because my father was a drill sergeant in the United States Army. So leadership at its finest. Wake up right. If you're on time, you're late. If you're early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late mentality. But from a leadership perspective, I've been around so many leaders from jobs and at school and just in general. But I think when I started working at the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Max, I was in my late 20s, early 30s. I was there for a little bit and was really around some good leaders, leaders that I've never been around with before. Obviously working with Ramiro Cavazos, who is now the president and CEO of the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I learned so much from him, but also from individuals like yourself, Max, and our board members and our members that I was so fortunate to be around. I met with so many small business owners, and I got to hear how they, the work ethic and culture they implement in their companies and what they're doing to help them scale and grow. And I was so fortunate to be around so many successful leaders in our community working at the chamber that, like a sponge, I absorbed all the good that I could from it to hopefully one day become a good leader myself. And so I'm very thankful for that leadership experience and what I was surrounded by while working at the San Antonio Hispanic Chamber. And even when I was fortunate enough to be recruited to Austin and be around a whole new different type of leadership mindset with Austin and San Antonio, I think everyone would agree, although our two cities are so close to one another, we are a world apart. And the mindset from Austin to San Antonio are different. And so I think that's really helped me really learn about what a good leader looks like and what they do on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you for sharing kind of where that came from and where you learned from it. And I'm guessing that the military experience, then seeing the business side of it, has kind of really rounded you off in very special ways. So what is your current philosophy or approach when it comes to leadership?
Sure. Me personally, even just been shared from words of wisdom and just, what I've picked up is, always doing what's right and always doing your best. Never forget that as a leader, if you're a CEO or a business owner, the reality is you work for your employees, the people you hire, because they're taking care of your customers. So what are you doing as a leader to ensure they're set up for success in their roles so you can overall build a successful company? And I'm also a big believer, and as at a very young age, I learned, because when we're young, we're ambitious, and we tend to overlook what the reality of a true leader is. And it's not necessarily seeking recognition, but really focusing on the results. Focus on results and not on the recognition. And when we're young, we become ambitious, right? So when we do something great, we want to let the people know who did it, why we did it, right? But in reality, if you just focus on the results, the recognition will come later, but just focus on results. And I'm so thankful I learned that early on. That was one of the nuggets that Ramiro shared with me early on, because he saw how ambition, my drive was, and that sometimes we have the me card, but we forget about the bigger picture, focus on results. And so I'm so thankful for that early lesson. That's all I focus on lately, Max, is what are we doing to drive the right results? That's all I care about, is what result focused, and recognition could come later if it ever does.
So I love that. As you know, I have several careers, right? And one of them was an executive for blue chip marketing companies and whatnot. And I think there's a big difference between the traditional corporate mindset and the small mid-market business. And the leaders have a very different focus. So when you're in a corporate career, you've got to do certain things that give you certain recognition, certain exposure. Otherwise, you don't continue moving up in the organization. But as a business owner, you can forget about that. And you can just say, what do we need to do to be successful, period? What are the decisions that need to be made that are going to be in the benefit of the organization, our team members, our clients? And that was one of the reasons why I guess I didn't enjoy my corporate experience as much as I do my entrepreneurial experience, because you've gotta do what's right. You can't focus on the me. You've got to focus on the organization. And one of the things that I find fascinating, and just to add to that, because it's this concept that it requires a certain level of maturity to get there, right? Whether it's external recognition or internal recognition. One of my favorite people that I've ever worked with told me, I used to think that I had to come up with all the answers and I needed to be the smartest person in the room. And that gave me great joy. And that's where I got my fix, knowing that I had the answers. But ultimately, I learned that if you're the smartest person in the room, then you're in the wrong room. And it's not about who's the smartest person or who gets the recognition. It's about accomplishing the mission, getting the outcomes, getting the results. And from then on, it's like a light bulb. Are they in it for themselves, or are they in it for the outcome? And if you're in it for yourself, you're going to be limited to the outcomes that you're going to achieve. But if you're focused on the outcomes, you're focused on serving, it makes a huge difference. So it's such a powerful point for everyone watching this in our audience, right? Where they can think for a moment, who am I? Am I the person that's trying to find the recognition, or am I trying to get things done? Follow Luis's advice. Focus on getting things done. You're going to end up going further faster.
Well, Max, I just shared it to you. You just positioned it more eloquently, but you did share something that I think many of us tend to overlook about, we are the smartest person in the room. You just shared that with you. We're in the wrong room, right? We need to really get up and go to a room where there are people that are smarter than us. And that's one thing coming from the nonprofit sector, with a big passion for what small businesses are doing in our economy, in our local community areas, but going to tech, right? I know the importance of tech and how important it is to have a strong technology infrastructure and a place of business to really move your company forward. But, for a while, I was saying SaaS when it was SaaS, and just picking up some tidbits here just by being around other smart individuals. But one thing I did pick up was I also early on said, sometimes you don't get the best advice, right? When you're talking to mentors. And I remember I was once told when I took the position in Austin that it's lonely at the top. When you're the CEO, it's lonely at the top. And I could see that. And that made sense at the time. But when I came to the tech sector and I shared that with, our co-founder and the brilliant Brett Pyatt, I said, well, Brett, because I was making mistakes, and it's okay to make mistakes, right? We all make mistakes. It's good because that means we're learning. Just don't be stupid and make the same mistake twice, right? But I remember telling Brett, it's CEOs lonely at the top. And he's like, Luis, that's the stupidest saying I've ever heard. It's lonely because you make it lonely. You literally have myself and other people you could just pick up the phone and call. So sometimes we forget the access we have available to us because maybe a sense of pride sits in where, well, I'm the CEO. I should be able to figure this out. I'm the business owner. I should be able to figure this out. There's Google, there's YouTube. So we spend an accumulative amount of time that we could be spending in our strengths trying to do something where we pick up the phone and just ask for help. We realize it's not so lonely when you're at the top. So, we were to go back to my 6 months question, besides doing well with Modern Managed IT and what we're doing, it's not so lonely at the top is something that I think I learned tremendously here in the last 6 months too, because we tend to forget the access we have available to us and take that for granted and not really utilize it to its fullest potential for us.
Well, I think that's a brilliant point, and I think that there's lots of ways where you can make yourself not lonely, right? So you can hang out with other people, and you can do it both formally and informally. You could join something like Vistage, which I think you're a part of. I think it's a fantastic organization where you're meeting with peers that are going through some of the same issues and challenges like yours. There's EO, entrepreneurs organizations. Depending on the level, there's YPO, there's a bunch of others which are formal, but you can also do it informally, right? You can just pick up the phone, and people like you are happy to talk to people like you. So I'm sure that if you received a call from someone somewhere else dealing with a challenge, heck, even if you didn't know them, you would probably spend a few times helping and supporting them because you're out there to help do good, not just achieve that recognition, right?
Yeah.
And of course, I almost forgot to say it. And then there's, people like me, coaches, mentors, advisors that can also help in some areas that you might need some help and make it a little bit less lonely. But what a great piece of advice, right? The top is not lonely, only if you make it.
That's true. So true. You're the one that has that choice to make it lonelier, or as lonely as you want to be on it, right? It doesn't have to be.
And you said, hey, one of the ways that you make it not lonely is, one, you're part of a peer group, but two, you're feeling more comfortable just picking up the phone and calling someone.
I am, yes, absolutely. Sometimes I might have been embarrassed to ask a certain question because, I have not been in the tech industry for as many years as I have been in the other nonprofit sector. So I don't have that in-depth knowledge that so many have. And, it was even asking questions to my wife. Sometimes we take for granted that you're married to someone in tech, like my wife, Yvonne, who's been at Rackspace for over 15 years. And I forgot that I could ask this individual so many questions, and I started to, right? But it's one of those things where, just ego got the better of me, Max, that I try to find ways to find it out by myself. And I think I wasted too much time doing that, where now, if it's something I can't figure out right away, one, I'm very fortunate. I work with a bunch of very, very smart people. One thing I have done was hire a bunch of very smart individuals who are taking great care of our customers, who I think are some of the best subject matter experts that we have here in San Antonio and throughout Texas as our employees or throughout the state of Texas. And so if they don't know, which is rare, I know I have a great, what is that called? The $1 million question, the helpline, right?
The lifeline. You've got your lifeline.
Thank you. Thank you, Max. Yeah, I have that lifeline readily available, and it's not just to be used once, it's to be used as many times as necessary. So, But also
So,
going back to having the peer groups is helpful in executive coaches. I can agree with you more. I think that is key for any leader to strategically have in their plan. You know, succession plan is, you know, what peer group, what coach is going to help me along the way. You need that. I don't think that's one thing. It's a nice to have. I think it's a must have, to be honest with you.
yeah, this is where I start to feel old, and I say, you know, back in my day,
Sure.
people would ask, you know, what is a business coach and why do I need one? And I think now people recognize that you're missing out if you don't have someone helping you, because they help you move faster, right? Not that you couldn't figure it out yourself, which goes back to the ego thing, but you can actually move faster. And if you recognize how valuable time is, get help, right? Whether it's peers, formally, informally, mentors, coaches, etc. But get the help that you need, because they're going to move you faster towards your goals, and you're going to learn a whole lot more, and it ends up saving you time and ultimately making you a whole lot more money. So let's try to bring this down and make it a little practical for our audience. So we've got a bunch of executives, business owners, people in the community, both in business and out of business, and they're like, I'm going to take Luis's advice. I'm going to pick up the phone and I'm going to call someone. I'm going to ask for help. How do they do it right? Is there a better way of doing it? How do you do it? How could you coach someone to say, look, you know, you probably need to get ready about figure out who you want to call and a few other things. How do you do it?
Sure. I think the relationship portion of the person you're going to call is an important aspect of it. It's someone you can trust. It's almost having your personal board of directors, per se, this network, these peers that you can go to and just be vulnerable with them. However, it's not just, you know, your high school best friend, right? These are people you look up to, that are mentors, that have been a part of a success that you like to one day accomplish yourself. People you look up to, that you make a part of your network, your board of directors, per se, and you let them know. Quite honest, Max, I've shared with a few, hey, can I call you in the midst of issue I'm running into? Would you mind, Max, if I give you a call one day out of the blue and ask you a question about business and that I'm stuck on? And so when you kind of plant that seed early on with the folks you would consider calling in those hard times, per se, or those times where you need support and help on a question or an issue you just can't get past, it'll be easier. It'll be easier than just cold calling someone you met last year at a gala or a dinner, and you loved their story, and you randomly call them out of the blue. Of course, because they're a good person, I'm sure they're going to help you. But if you had already planted the seed beforehand, it's just that much easier to make the call. I had this conversation with Max a year ago, and he said, absolutely, Luis, you can call me whenever. I'm here. If I can't help you, I'll find someone that can, right? But when you plant the seed early on with a select group of folks who you think will be helpful in your journey as you're building a business, I think it'll make it that much easier to pick up the phone and call.
Wow, that is so brilliant, right? That to me is one of those pearls of wisdom we just got out of you, which is prepare, right? Know that you're going to need help, people, that you're going to need your help. And when you meet with them, you know, sow the seed, ask for permission, get them willing to do it. So then it's not a cold call, because heck, cold calling is scary and being rejected is not fun. So you're preparing for that. You're preparing them for that. And once that happens, they had already agreed with you. So it just flows kind of nicely, right? So for anyone that was thinking that they would have to pick up the phone and call a stranger, you're saying maybe you could do that, but you're meeting people all the time. Start with them.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, just having a cup of coffee with them or breakfast, just about planting the seed. You know, just like you said, it's preparing. It's just getting that individual ready and the circumstance ready for when it happens. It'll be actually, you know, it might be an easier solution because you did the work early on, and instead of kind of trying to figure it out.
So that is just one of like the 4 points you made, and I want to go back to them because I think they are so powerful. So number one, ask beforehand, build a relationship, get them to agree before you even call them. Two, you said, think about the people that you want to be like, that you want to model after, that have done or achieved what you want to do or achieve, or have had success in that area. That way you're modeling after the right people, right? You have the right example in your mind. To me, that is where a lot of people go wrong, where they actually end up modeling the wrong people and end up going in not the direction they want to go in their lives. Three, be vulnerable. We didn't, I mean, we talked about, putting the ego to the side, but such a powerful concept. And I think that the world is getting more and more comfortable with this idea of shifting from, you've got to have all the answers, you got to be perfect, you got to be right, you got to be bulletproof, to you're a human being and you can be vulnerable. Can you tell us more about that idea of being vulnerable, what it means? How do you do it? How do you do it?
Yeah, no, sure. Vulnerability, I think it's one of the things that even I struggle with, Max. It's I think you're to date, my daughters or even my wife have maybe never seen me shed a tear. It's not that I'm not shedded a tear, it's just I don't feel comfortable shedding a tear in front of my loved ones. And they consider me the dad, right? And whatnot. So there's a sense of strength and that comes with it. But being vulnerable is just something that actually I set as a goal this year, is to become a bit more vulnerable and to just put out my cards on the table. When we are willing to do that, I'm learning, you're going to get better feedback, the necessary feedback to help you really move along a little quicker. As you mentioned, instead of holding back and just maybe giving snippets just here and there instead of the full picture. When you give the full picture, when you're being vulnerable and you provide the full picture, expect the maximum advice to come back. But when you're giving bits and pieces because you're not being truly transparent or being as vulnerable as you should be, you're not going to get the best in return. So that's something I've learned, and it's something that I'm going to implement moving forward, is how important it is to be vulnerable as an entrepreneur, even as a father, as a leader in general.
Yeah, it's such a cultural clash, right? With a lot of what we learned about, what we saw, what was expected from us. But a lot has happened in in the last 20 years or so. So being vulnerable allows you to hear the uncomfortable realities that others might see, but ultimately it allows you to know where you have to improve.
Mm-hmm.
And it's difficult because the challenge is, I'm supposed to be perfect, but I know that I'm not, and what it could mean to the ego to recognize that you're not. So it's kind of like a constant struggle of who you see yourself to be versus how to get better. And it's something that a lot of people struggle with. And again, organizationally, that has been the mindset, right? If you're not perfect, then there might be somebody better than you, which means they get the promotion, they get better pay, they get a better life. So you can't show that.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're, I think I've had a few conversations with you where I've seen that vulnerability, but what might it sound like? What might it sound like for someone to hear what vulnerability is? So A, they don't take advantage of it, or B, so they know how they have to present themselves to others.
Max, that's a really good question, and it's actually one that I'm trying to figure out. As I shared with you, is what I want to implement this year from a vulnerability standpoint. But I guess what I've quickly learned is you just can't be afraid of the uncomfortable situation it's going to put you in, because in reality, it does put you in a very uncomfortable situation, right? When you're being vulnerable and kind of just putting it all out there, it is a very uncomfortable situation. And you mentioned it earlier, the feedback that you're going to receive because you're being so vulnerable, might not be what you want to hear. And you have to be okay with listening to that, because you're being vulnerable. So they're being truthful and returning the feedback that you're kind of displaying for them to digest, the individual to digest, and then provide you, truth. And so that's where I'm not nowhere near where I should be. If you were asking me, Luis, where is your meter on vulnerability right now? I'd be lying if I say and if it's up to 100, I'm at maybe 20% right now. I still have a long way to go personally, but I hope to get there sooner rather than later.
Well, that is a great example of vulnerability. So everyone, if you needed to hear or see an example of what that looks like, there it is, just right there, right? Recognizing it and knowing that there's some way to go. I think you actually said, you obviously just exemplified it, but there's another part, which is just the fact that you're picking up the phone and calling someone means that you're putting yourself in a vulnerable position. You're saying, I'm not as smart as you are, or as knowledgeable or experienced in this subject matter, and that's why I'm calling you, which automatically makes you, vulnerable, because you're positioning yourself as, I don't have the answers here. Now, as someone that receives calls from people wanting some advice, wanting some direction, wanting some support, I can tell you what vulnerability doesn't sound like. So, audience, listen up. If you're going to be calling one of these persons that you're going to have asked for permission beforehand, that you want a role model, and that you want to be vulnerable with them, don't ask a question and provide all the answers for that question, making you feel like you already have the solution, right? So it's like, I have a problem with this, but I'm doing this, and this is working, and I think I'm great. It's like, well, then what do you need, right? Because when you're doing all that, you're trying to make yourself not look as bad, right, in your mind, or making yourself look like as you have the solution. But ultimately, you called because there's a gap. So ask the questions and hold back. Wait until somebody else asks you, right? Because that's one of the first things that I would do, is I would ask, well, what are you doing, right? How's that working? Why is it working? Why is it not working? What can you learn from that? What is your next thought or approach, et cetera, et cetera. But let the person that you're calling and asking guide you through those questions. If you show up and you're like, yeah, I don't have a problem, I don't know why I'm even calling, it's not gonna work, right? But if you ask the question, put it in the hands of the person that you're asking, either let them guide you or let them provide you with advice, and then you could decide whether you want to use it or if you don't want to use it. And if you feel that there's some information that they're missing, you can always add it, right? So thank you for that. Last point of these four that you made, it's a concept that I've been working with for a long time, and it's probably one of the most valuable things that anyone here listening could and should do, which is build their own personal board of advisors. Build your own personal board of advisors. And there's more formal ways of doing it. There's more informal ways of doing it. But have your experts, right? Have those people that you know, like, trust, and know, like, and trust you back, that are really good with different subjects, that are willing to sit down with you and talk to you and help you through it. So are you building this kind of board? Do you have this board? Do you do it formally or informally? What's been your approach so far?
Yeah, no. So I've always had some that board-like mentality, especially in the nonprofit sector. I had those key individuals I felt were so instrumental in helping me be enjoy my path in that nonprofit Chamber of Commerce tenure and career that allowed me to grow and learn so much. However, when I came into the tech sector, a lot of those board of directors, board advisors, weren't necessarily in tune with what my new landscape is or was, right? And I didn't have very many colleagues or mentors who had to go fundraise money, for example, and put a pitch deck together and talk about EBITDA. So I quickly had to put one together because I knew the importance of it before coming back to San Antonio as I started trickling through this opportunity to launch Modern Managed IT. And slowly but surely, Max, I'm putting that board together. It's still not complete, but I think that the small board that I have right now, it has been instrumental, and it continues to have openings for me to meet the right individuals that I could talk to, have coffee with, share my vision of what we want to do at Modern Managed IT. Hopefully they see it and like it, and if they do, maybe they would be willing to serve on that my board of advisors, my personal board of advisors, to be helpful to me along this journey, because it took a while to build it when I was in the chamber world, and it's going to take me a little bit, a while to build it here as I'm in the tech sector. And I need the right, as we work on as leaders, we hire the right people in the right roles. We should also be mindful of our board of advisors, the right board members of our current situation that'll be helpful for us in where we're at in life right now.
What a great idea. So as you grow, as you evolve, as you take on new challenges, the board that might have been helpful at some point might not necessarily be the people or the board that's going to be helpful in your new reality or in the reality that you're trying to create. So you don't have to be loyal or exclusive to certain individuals. You could recognize that you have moved on since, and that you might need a different expertise in becoming aware of who you're surrounding yourself consistently. What a great piece of advice, Luis. Reminder for our audience, you can go into practicalleadership.com or practicaleadership.com, only one L. You're going to be able to download a summary of today's conversation with Luis, and we're going to be working through a template that's going to allow you to follow the steps to try to achieve some of the success that Luis has achieved when it comes to getting support, getting mentors, and being vulnerable. You can also find and learn a little bit more about Modern Managed IT at your website, Luis.
Yeah, modernmanagedit.com.
Excellent. Thank you. And by the way, they have some awesome t-shirts, bright and colorful. And if you're nice enough to them, you'll get one yourself.
Absolutely.
Luis, let me ask you this. Is there a particular practice that you currently have that could be beneficial to our audience? Like, it's like, look, I have this little tool or format or template that I use that helps me with my team or has helped me before, that you'd like to share. Is there any like little thing that it's like, hey, this is my go-to?
Yeah, sure. I think yeah, I have a few. I'll just share a couple. One, when I do hire folks, I don't know if many have heard of Patrick Lencioni. I never know if I say his last name correctly or not, but he has the Ideal Team Player. I read this book many years ago, and it's a format I've used since hiring, being in charge of hiring. I'm a hiring manager and whatnot, and it's worked. It really has. Nothing's ever perfect, but when you have that go-to format or a process in place, it's been very instrumental in helping me hire the right people for the right roles and help create that tenure and that culture that's desperately needed, especially from a startup perspective. It's been very helpful, very instrumental. I'm also a big believer in habits.
Let me take a step back just to add something for everyone. So, because there's a few things that you said. So number one is have a good solid system that is predictable and consistent. And you're particularly recommending them to read Pat Lencioni's book, The Ideal Team Player. He talks a little bit about 3 key characteristics that he's looking for in people: humble, hungry, and smart, all of which our host, I'm sorry, not our host, our guest here clearly exemplifies. Thank you for that. So humble, hungry, and smart. Let's just talk about that for 1 second, because they'll go read the book. They'll be able to follow the system, but I'm sure there's a lot of tips and tricks on how to make it possible. How do you identify somebody that is humble, hungry, smart? What are the things you look for?
Yeah, so from a hunger perspective, especially when you're in a startup, you talk about transparency. You have to be very honest when you're hiring folks. And if you're recruiting someone from a corporation where they're in the tech sector and they're used to huge human resource department, right? Or just the magnitude of what it is to work for a major corporation and scaling to a startup. It's fun to be part of a startup more than you'll ever know, especially one that's doing the greater good. But you got to seek that hunger from an individual here, differently from when I did working at the chamber, right? It's that hunger to do good, to want to provide that ultimate solution for the end user, our customer, not necessarily to have a hunger to come in on time, work at 9 and just leave late, the first in, last out. It's really a different type of hunger that I'm looking for. That's part of the entrepreneurial spirit, and can manage that and stay with us. So your hunger, you'll define your own hunger for your own company yourself. Mine right now as a tech startup is I'm looking for those who has that hunger to drive, succeed, and see something scale and grow, and that wants to be a part of that. When we look at humility or being humble, it's a team effort. I think I've shared that with you. And so what are we doing to humble ourselves, to not want to be that shining, that one individual star player, when it's really a team effort? I love the San Antonio Spurs. I think no one exemplifies more humility than what we've had here in San Antonio these last 25 plus years, even though we're not winning right now. But it wasn't necessarily about star players. It was the right players in the right roles with a team mindset. And it wasn't a superstar individualism. It was a superstar team concept, right? Each individual creates a superstar of a team, not one individual superstardom. And so that's what I look for. When you look at SMART, it's not what one thinks. And when they read the book, when you think SMART, it's like, oh, obviously they have to be certified in Microsoft and Google Workspace, have all these Amazon Web Service certifications, right? That's just part of the job description. You need to have that. But from a SMART perspective, is how does one handle themselves in an uncomfortable situation with a colleague, especially from a startup? I can't afford to have such high turnover because of someone doesn't get along with someone because of someone ate a pizza or something that they weren't supposed to, or they have different color hair or whatnot, right? So it's the SMART. When you look at SMART, that'll be something you define yourself, is how are they smart from a common sense perspective, from just being a good colleague, a good team player. We know they're smart. They meet all the criteria from a degree and experience and whatnot, but SMART is defined differently in the ideal team player.
That is some excellent advice, because sometimes I love books. I read tons of books. I recommend everyone reads books. But the fun part to me is converting the theory in the books to something practical, or even some books that are a little bit more prescriptive. It's in the implementation that if you don't implement correctly, you'll get stuck. It won't work for you, and you won't develop those skills. So skill development, the foundation is a theory, but ultimately you develop the skills putting them into practice. Hence, practical leadership. So it's interesting. You're a startup, so you need a lot of versatility. You need people that are versatile and are excited, right? So as a startup, you can't have like the person that does one thing and one thing only. You need someone that is going to be flexible and is going to be excited about what is possible, and it's going to be driven to accomplish. So that's one part. Second, you said someone that is the humble part is being team oriented, understanding that there's a system in place, and that they need to follow the playbook, and that it's not about superstars, it's about the collective efforts. So humility as saying, it's not about me shining, it's about the team succeeding. And third, you really kind of started digging into the emotional intelligence side of things, saying, look, how people are going to behave in difficult situations is even more important than their technical skills, because we're going to be facing a lot of uncertainty as we grow. That happens a lot with scale-up organizations as well, right? Any organization that is in a place where things are moving pretty fast, where people need to be able to have the conversations, need to be able to control their emotions, recognize each other's feelings and what is happening to them both mentally and physically during, discussions, arguments, or where we don't see eye to eye, and being able to go back to this idea of we're in here to do good, which is kind of what you've consistently said throughout here, right? We're here to do good. We're here to be advocates. We're here to help our clients. And if we can focus on that, then we will all succeed. And it's not about who comes up with the idea. It's about how did we all implement. So that is a wonderful example of how you can take a book and put it into practice and get great outcomes.
Yeah, absolutely.
You had a second one for us, so I think we might have enough time for one more. Do we?
Yeah, no, and I was going to just share, and it kind of forming good habits, right? Having I know maybe people might think it sounds boring to have a system in place, a repetitive system in place, but godly, it works. It truly works. It's something I adapted 4 years ago. I read a book called Atomic Habits 4 years ago and implemented that, and it's been very helpful to me from a professional a development standpoint, and also personally as well. So definitely recommend. I don't know if that book's for them, great. If not, just having good habits in place that are meaningful and impactful and are helping you with your end goal, whatever that is. What's your end goal, and what habits are you creating to help you get to that end goal?
We could do a whole podcast just on the concept, just on the idea of habits.
Yeah.
Because habits, is what is ultimately going to drive our behaviors, which is going to determine our goals. But I love that you have identified that it's a book that's not just meant to be personal, it's meant to be organizational as well. So for our audience, I'll give you like a tiny bit of it, right? It's this idea that we need to eliminate the habits that don't serve us, replace them with better habits. And we probably need to start small, right? Do little things, make it very easy to build habits. So what are some ways that you make it easy to build new habits in your organization? Do you have an example of how you could start small and build on that?
Yeah, for here, what we started early onset was, I wanted to get used to everyone. We started virtual too, and people got Zoom fatigue, Google Meets. Everyone got fatigued a little bit from the virtual platform. But we started little. I knew I couldn't ask people to join me for an hour type of a conversation or meeting right off the bat. So we just started implementing it in little levels. Like, hey, I want to meet everyone at this time for 10 minutes. This is what we're going to go over. I always had an agenda with the meeting and a purpose. Those 10 minutes turned into 15, 20, 30. We created that habit of meeting every time at a certain time that eventually has really been instrumental in having the team focus on making sure that meeting is part of their day. And if they don't come to that meeting, it's almost not brushing our teeth, not putting on deodorant. We created that important habit of meeting and identifying issues and implementing the right solutions. But we started in baby steps, because when I had this conversation early on about having these meetings, it was, Luis, we're in startup. We got to focus. We're kind of go. Let's meet at 9 p.m. So, senior leadership would meet at all out hours. That's just part of entrepreneurship. That's just how it launches. But from a team concept, you don't want to develop that culture yet, right? That type of culture, you don't want to scare anyone away. So we did it in baby steps, right? So senior leadership, we would meet at the time we needed to meet to discuss what we need to discuss, and how do we take what we're trying to do and do it in 10 minutes with the team, and now in 15 minutes, 20. And so now we developed this hour and 15 long meeting weekly that has been very instrumental in helping us just progress and move forward by, again, just identifying issues, implementing the right solutions for our customers, and then just also checking in with each other on a weekly basis. And this is when everyone was working remotely too. So it was also good seeing folks for a good amount of time that when you're building a team for that 1 hour and a half or 1 hour and 15 minutes a week that you didn't see on a daily basis or interact with.
Well, thank you. You gave us a lot on that. So first thing is, you got to recognize the reality of the situation, right? Recognize where people currently stand. And I think I've seen you do that consistently. recognize where they are. So you recognize how you think they're going to be responding to whatever you're going to be putting in front. Then you said, kind of think about the end goal, or, you had the end in mind. At some point, we're going to have to be able to sit down for a longer period of time to go through what we need to go through to accomplish what we need to accomplish. And then you had like a little bit of a strategy where you said, we're going to start small, help people see the value in it, and build on it, right? And I think that's the formula for success. I think we need to kind of mimic nature in many ways. That's a whole other conversation. But nature doesn't do things in big steps. It does it in small increments. And I think you're taking on to that. And a great example is, the evolution of your team meetings and how everybody now feels that they are valuable and useful, which is another great conversation, because most people don't like meetings. And the reason they don't like meetings is because they seem like a waste of time, because they're either not getting value or not giving value. So it feels like a waste of time. And you were able to build on it. So it did do that.
Mm-hmm.
How many different iterations of what that ideal meeting looks like did you go through?
Oh man, several. Oh, it was a lot of whiteboarding and scrapping until we finally got to get a system in place that allowed us to have impact, right? Obviously from those meetings, what impact was being created, right? It wasn't just to have a meeting to meet sake, as you said, or even identify and talk about a solution, but the solution was discussed and the plan was implemented to provide that solution. So there was the impact, that outcome that we were seeking to have. So like you mentioned, it was meaningful because it's not Luis Rodriguez solving everything. It's literally the team being a part of it, providing their expertise, their knowledge on how we can move forward and solve certain issues that arise. And then the impact, the goal, the outcome of the success that we had from that discussion is what's been very instrumental in having successful meetings. Even folks who take their day off, Max, will come in on that meeting because they had an idea that they wanted to share with the group. It's great to see early on.
That is brilliant. And I think that's one of the most important things, that sometimes our expectations don't match reality. And sometimes people expect that, hey, I'm going to create a meeting agenda and it's got to be perfect and it's got to work the first time. And what you're saying is, no, we went through a bunch of iterations on how to do it correctly for what we're trying to accomplish. And we finally got to something that works, which, by the way, will probably not work in 6 months or a year, because things will have evolved even more. So getting people to have the right expectation. Okay, so this is the time where I try to summarize what you've said, but you've given us so much value that it might take me 20 minutes to summarize everything, but I'm going to try my best, right? I think it all started with having the right mindset. And you said the right mindset starts with doing what's right and doing what's best to deliver the outcomes, and the outcomes being serving others and serving people. You said you're here to serve your team members. You are here to set them up for success. It's not about what you accomplish yourself, but it's rather what we accomplish as a team. And you've got to put the individual ego to the side, right? Your personal results, your personal accolades come second to the success of the team and the achievement of the goal and adding the value. So focus on those outcomes that you want to deliver for the team. We had a great conversation in terms of how it doesn't have to be lonely at the top, and that there's a lot of people that are willing to help you. So the first thing you've got to do is figure out who are the people that you want to model after. Who are those that you aspire to be like, and know some of the things that you'd like to know more about. Plant those seeds, ask them up front to take your call once you decide to give them a call. Make sure you're spending some time with them too. So when you actually need their help, they're willing to take your call and have that conversation. We talked about how you needed to be vulnerable, to recognize that, look, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all the answers. And it is okay to recognize that there's a way for you to go. There's a way for you to grow, and that you're in the process of it. We talked about this idea of setting a personal board of advisors, personal board of directors. people that you can be vulnerable with, people that you know, like, and trust. They know, like, and trust you back, that will help you in your journey. But you also have to recognize that there might be changes in that journey. Your needs might be different from what the people that you currently have might be able to help you with. So it is both necessary and it is acceptable to be looking for the people that you're going to need in the future. So you don't have to be loyal. They don't have to stay in your board forever. You need to evolve as you evolve. We talked about hiring and the importance of hiring people that are humble, hungry, and smart. You're recommending everyone go read Pat Lencioni's book on the ideal team player. And we talked a little bit about what it means for you specifically as a startup. We talked a little bit about how if you're a startup, you're looking for versatility and people that are excited about what can be accomplished, right? They're the people that show up to the meeting even when they don't have to, because they're excited to share their thoughts or excited to share their ideas. There are also people that are team-oriented, that can put the personal glory to the side and recognize that it's about the success of the team, and that recognize that there's a system that needs to be both developed and implemented, and that's kind of like the winning formula. And they have to be emotionally intelligent, because there's going to be lots of issues and challenges. People are not going to see eye to eye a lot of times, but they've got to be able to get through those things. So it is important for you that they are smart in that way. And last, which thank you for that, because it was like a bonus for everyone, develop good habits. Eliminate the bad ones, create new ones. Start small and build up on them. Your expectation shouldn't be that you're going to be perfect since day one. Your expectation should be that you're going to get better and get to a point where things really work for you. And in particular, we talked about have a solid agenda, have meetings that have purpose, revise them often until you get to something that really works. Okay, what did I miss, Luis?
I think you hit a home run there, Max. Great job, and a way to recap a great conversation that was had between two dear friends.
Thank you. Well, that was all you. That was all your knowledge and in wisdom shared with us today. So before we go, let me just remind everyone, you can visit practicalleadership.com, practicaleadership.com. You can watch some other podcasts, download the template and summary of this podcast and others. Make sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Share with us your comments, and please let us know who you'd like to have in future podcasts. There's a lot of great leaders out there in our community, and I would love to know who they are, and I'd love to be able to have conversations similar to this. Luis, what is something that you are excited about that's happening here the next few weeks or months?
The next few weeks, my daughter, we're going to take her to Harvard as she has ambitions to attend Harvard. So a good friend of ours is hosting us there. So that's here for spring break. So love spending time with the family, especially when you sneak in a little bit of travel with them. So that's exciting. And from a company perspective, we're getting ready to launch into our second round of fundraising, as we're looking to seek additional funding so we can launch in different markets across the state. So that's exciting. That's coming up here in the next quarter or so as well. So a lot of exciting times.
Absolutely.
A lot of exciting things happening. Sorry, exciting times.
Exciting times and exciting things. So for everyone that thinks that Modern Managed IT is a small startup, I can tell you right now, it's going to be a company that's going to be here for a very, very long time. And you will never be treated as a number, and you will get the solutions that you need, and the team will do everything they can to help you be successful and to have the solutions that you want. I know that a lot of the philosophy will come from fanatical support from Rackspace. I know that you're kind of that's where a little bit from where Brett comes from. And I know that that's something you guys are fanatical about, right? Giving people the support that they need. So, as we're talking about rounds of funding, it's just to be able to help you serve even more and more and better and better. So modernmanagedit.com. If you're a small business, you have IT needs, you have to check them out. Luis, any final words for our audience today?
Now, just Max, thanks for having me. Those listening, thanks for listening. Hope y'all found some value in our discussion today. And if you ever see me, come say hi. I'm super approachable. I love starting new friendships and new discussions. Thank you.
And ask him for one of those bright and beautiful t-shirts.
That's right. And I'll gladly give them to you.
Luis, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much, my friend. And we'll talk again soon.
Thank you.